Grand existence. Grand existence. Grand existence. Grand existence universe. Something like that. We're working on it all. Right now you're watching the Kinks be worked out in live time. I don't know what this thing is, but it came attached to the microphone, so I'm gonna try to get this going. Try to get somebody on here to help me test this. So if you're out there in the world, I know nobody's watching this right now. So, yo, American Esoteric. Thank God, man. I was just looking for somebody to help me verify that this stuff is working. You see me and hear me loud and clear. Fantastic. So I'm just going to start rambling, bro. And this is live because I need it to be like open discussion. I can't talk to myself. I can, but I sometimes enter into these echo chambers. So I'll definitely be monitoring the chat and saying what's up, because there's some things I want to talk to the world about, obviously. And I'd like the world to talk back, because it's a dialogue, you know? But plant medicine and the simulation hypothesis. Actually, I've been meaning to get on here for a very long time and talk about this, because it seems like the greatest thing that's happening that nobody is talking about, or nobody's paying attention to. I don't care if you talk about it or not, but if you have awareness of it, you know, it becomes a part of your life. And this simulation hypothesis has been becoming a part of my life for a long ass time. And I do use curse words sometimes, so, you know, if you're not prepared for that, get prepared. So how do I start this? I don't know. It's like, at the beginning, I don't want this to be 3 hours long. I want it to be succinct. I don't know. I'm going to try to keep doing this regularly. This is going to be a radio show because I do have a lot to say or to divulge. And basically, simulation confirm. We're living in a simulation. There is a hypothesis about a simulation out there, and it is novel. I'm going to be the first to tell you, unless you've already heard it, but I'm assuming, based on the conversations I've had so far, that the simulation hypothesis, at least the ones that are being experimentally validated, are not what you think they are. They are not the simulation that you see in the Matrix, or that Bostrom is talking about, or what's that other guy's name? Donald Hoffman, Rizwan Virk. Like, they're definitely on the right track, I think, truly. But a lot of people, when they hear the idea of simulation theory, that they think immediately, they kind of immediately pick up this nihilistic approach about the world. And all of a sudden, because it's a simulation, nothing means anything. Everything's meaningless. Your actions don't matter. And there's always this line people say, like, oh, you think you're living in a simulation? Go jump off a building and then see what happens. And it's like, man, I'm sorry, but that ain't it, bro. You got the wrong idea about the simulation hypothesis, and it probably comes from popular media, popular culture. Definitely the whatever brothers, sisters that wrote The Matrix and, you know, Neo, the one. It's kind of similar. There's a lot of metaphors there that we can definitely unpack and apply to reality, but it's not actually like that. Simulation hypothesis comes from physics. It comes from science. It doesn't come from philosophers. It comes from people trying to understand the fundamental nature of reality, and them trying to apply old archaic paradigms, old worldviews that simply don't work. They're not functional. They don't explain. They don't have the explanatory power over the direct phenomena of reality as observed in physics experiments and the phenomenologically obvious present moment, as Terence McKenna called it, the direct, what did he call it? He said, the felt immediate presence of the moment. And that, extrapolates into all the wonderful things of life: free will, love, emotion, all the things that are important to you are not really explained by the conventional standard model of reality, the contemporary model. And so scientists, the leading edge of scientists, and mind you, I've got a lot of beef with scientists, and if you actually look into the etymology of the word science, you'll realize that it is, I mean, you do got to dig deep, and I did see this in a TikTok, but then I verified it all. But science and shit have the same etymology. They originated like distinctly separate. Like people that were saying shit didn't turn like the idea of shit into science, but like the word, just the sound, the homophonetic became used in different parts of the world at the same time, which has a very funny and I think perhaps divine connection, because a lot of science is shit nowadays. What they're saying, like science back in the day with like Francis Bacon, with the fathers, Isaac Newton, the fathers of science, Copernicus, like Galileo, these guys were trying to explain the whole world. And they were attempting to create Einstein theories of everything, basically. They want to create a theory of everything that explains life and all of its phenomena from one overarching universal worldview. And this is before science was developed, because obviously Western science was developed out of alchemy. Shout out, we're definitely going to stay. Everything is connected here, so don't think I'm just talking about science and simulation and it's not like about plant medicine. That's why I titled it Plant Medicine and the Simulation Hypothesis, because it's all freaking connected. But these guys, you read Paracelsus, I think it's the Aurora of the philosophers. I could be mistaken, but there's a school of thought in alchemy, in the development of Western civilization and tracing its roots back really all the way back to Egypt, that in the beginning, before the fall of man, and I would argue that the fall of man is a reference to the cataclysms that occurred, which are mainly referred to as flood myths. But the fall of man, when we came out of greater understanding of the world and we lost the ability to communicate directly with the divine, what is portrayed by these Renaissance thinkers is that in the beginning there was a perfect science. There was one science that ruled them all, basically. One science to rule them all. And at the fall of man, this science, this wisdom, this knowledge, this ancient knowledge was fractured. Some people say like into 14 pieces, and it was spread all across the land. And the gods came down, and like it can be akin to a universal language where, they say the gods came down, the Elohim came down and confused mankind with language. And so then you got people over here saying one thing, people over here saying another thing. They think they're trying to talk to each other, but they don't understand each other, or they think they're saying different things, but in truth they are saying the same thing underneath all the separation of the confusion of tongues. And so what these guys were like searching for was that original knowledge, the knowledge from before the fall of man. They unified all the different sciences, from geometry to astronomy to mathematics to philosophy, chemistry, everything. All came originally from one. And so this original, call it a holy science, because it's wholesome, fractured into what we get today. And in the Renaissance people, they looked at it, they had slightly different sciences now. They had, I don't know what I should call it. They had just a lot of different avenues of understanding the world. But they were keen on tracing back the knowledge to unify all this. And this is like the origins of what Einstein called the TOE, the theory of everything, a grand unified field theory, something that melded all the sciences together into one overarching universal understanding. And what am I even talking about now? So the scientists, I got beef with them. They're saying all sorts of stuff. So the original guys, that's what they were looking for. The key to ultimate wisdom, to understanding life in its totality. And now what we have nowadays, we have people who they identify as scientists, and there's reason for this. I have YouTube videos explaining the history of the scientific worldview and how the aims and the goals of the scientific institution were actually lowered by the Royal Society, because through experimentation they realized that their approach to the world did not have the capacity to explain the entire world, and so they stopped trying to do that, which I think was a grave error in the scientific tradition, because science was originally meant to be a tool to describe and unveil ultimate truth. But nowadays, most 99% of science is just data collectors, is what I call them. Like, they're only dealing with the very fine resolution, detailed information that our reality generates. Like, what happens when you have a different conformation in an enzyme and it's in the presence of this media, and how does it react to that, and how long does it take? And so everything, instead of becoming this multi-dimensional perspective on reality, becomes reduced down to a deterministic, two-dimensional Cartesian worldview, where everything can be plotted on a graph, measured and calculated for its next probable state, for its next outcome in reality. And so that's what most scientists are doing nowadays. Like, no offense to scientists, but I think a real scientist is asking the big questions and doing things that, searching for understanding in the world of the unknown, instead of just randomly running experiments. A scientist is supposed to follow the scientific method, which means you follow multiple different steps, which is observe the world. That is the first step of the scientific method. So you have to make an observation in the world. And what we want now, what that means, I think, for me, or for us, for anybody that's seeking out how to be a good scientist, which is like, not to beat a dead horse with the science thing, but I want to point out the fact that there's probably about 1% of scientists who are really still looking for the great answers of the world, who are trying to put together a unified field theory of everything. And that relies on an individual's ability to be open-minded and skeptical, because the first two steps of the scientific method are observation and question. So the first one, observation. What are you looking at? What are you allowing into your consciousness? What are you allowing to yourself to observe in the information that you are accumulating inside of your mind? Okay? And then you have to have the audacity to step outside of yourself and question the things you're seeing. And that opens up a hydra, I believe is the name, or like a can of worms, for better warnings, or for better words. And then you have to try to make sense of it. The principal question of science really is, why does this happen after that? Like, what causes this to make that happen? What causes something to happen? That's really, what is the original cause of phenomena in the world? And we've been asking this question for a really long time, and we haven't really come up with any empirical, concrete answers as to what is causing things. Now, we have made many different hypotheses about the world. Some of them less explanatory than others. You know, at the height of science, what we have now, or, there's something going on in science right now. It's the simulation hypothesis. It's going to revolutionize everything. But like before this, and I'm saying this is like this is emerging right now. In the past few weeks, we've developed some groundbreaking experiments, which I'm trying to convey here, but I'm trying to paint the picture as to why they're important. Because before that, but like the scientists realized, like back in the 40s, that through their experimentations into the fabric of reality, that our worldview that we've been holding on to, Einstein's general theory of relativity, Newton's theory of physics, of gravity, what does he call that thing? Principia Physica. The materialist worldview, which developed out of the Renaissance, it falls short. It falls short of explaining things. And what happened in the 40s is that the theory fell short of explaining the observations. And so instead of the scientists going back to their hypothesis and changing the fundamental viewpoint of their perspective, they invented new sciences, right? So the purpose of the scientific method is to find the original truth, the original science. But what it has turned into is the diametric opposite of that, to where now it invents new sciences to explain things that are not explainable by the old sciences. But then they hold all of them together as if it is one, as if it is like a functional, multifaceted perspective that, this part applies over here, this science only applies for that, this science only applies for that. It's fractionated, it's compartmentalized. And this can be very useful, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to dog science and say, look at all the advancements and the technologies that we've gotten in the world and how they're all, useless because the science is useless and it's not the unified field. But I'm saying that when we apply it correctly, the technology that is going to come from a unified theory is going to be light years higher in quality than what we're getting now. Everything about how we interact with the world will change when our fundamental beliefs, our fundamental tenets, our fundamental assumptions about the world are challenged. And so that's what's important about scientific method. A good scientist is open-minded and skeptical. They're willing to look at new things. They're required to question it, because really the purpose of a big picture scientific perspective is to falsify old paradigms, to take something, reduce it down to a very simple and elegant explanation that can really be summed up in a single axiom. And that's what Newton was trying to do with these laws. He's like, okay, these are the fundamental laws of the world. They turned out to be wrong. And so scientists don't really attempt to even do that anymore, because they just get proven wrong all the time. And so where that leads us is between a rock and a hard place, because we got this thing that produces fruits, but it doesn't show where the fruits are getting their nutrients from. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't show the connection to the roots. From the roots to the fruits. That's a saying I'm going to work on from now on. But point being that science has really been at a standstill for explaining the world and its phenomena, from everything from the experience of the self and the I, the consciousness, to to choices, to love, to even the simple things. People think we know stuff, but you don't. When you understand, we don't. When you understand what the scientists have been doing, we don't know what matter is. We don't know where spin or charge came from, where matter came from. We don't know what attraction is. We don't know what gravity is. I say that to some people sometimes, and they're totally triggered And I've got to explain to him, like, yo, Isaac Newton said himself in his own diaries, I don't know what's causing gravity. It is he says something along the lines of it's like a mysterious or occult force. I can't remember the exact quote. I have said it in other videos. I'm not saying to go watch them, but like, he said something about it being a mystery. I'm paraphrasing. He said, there is no explanation using my theories, the theory of gravity, to explain what's causing gravity. Now, sure, we can measure it. We can collect data about it that gives us some sort of prediction power. But the true origin, the why, the meaning of the whole thing is law. It's currently imperceptible. To Newton, it was imperceptible. Nowadays, we've got better lenses for the world, which leads me to the simulation hypothesis and hopefully to plant medicine at some point. But the train is chugging along. It's my first live stream, going live in a long time. I'm trying to keep this thing, not too crazy, but succinct as well, because I have a tendency to ramble. So that's what I'm saying. If like I say something and you're like, what the fuck, put it in the chat and I'll let you know. I'll try to clear up what I'm saying. But so scientists nowadays, there's about 1% of them out there that are really asking the big questions, and it's hard to answer the big questions in a world that's dominated by a materialist physicalism, determinist worldview. It's hard to challenge the status quo from a philosophical, theoretical standpoint. So you got a lot of great theories out there, and the simulation theory's been around for a minute, but how does it actually work? What are the mechanics of the simulation hypothesis that make it a decent theory of reality? And if these mechanics are the truth, how does that make it a better worldview or a theory of everything than what we've previously had? And there's no way to tell that without experimental application, validation, and falsification. You need to apply the experiment, falsify the previous model, which is easy. It's been done. It was done in the 40s. People still don't want to accept it, though. Or they don't know how to accept it, or they don't know what the fuck's going on. So, and then what did I say? Apply it, validate it through the experiment. So you get the hypothesis, you design an experiment, and then based on the results of the experiment, you either validate the hypothesis and thus falsify the old models, or you fall short, your hypothesis is flawed, and you fail to validate. And scientists are like so funny because, industry scientists now, because when they want to do it, they just like paint everything as gray. Nothing is like, it's not binary. It's all, when they say that they have a successful experiment, they're like, we fail to validate. Or no, they say, it's something where they're just like, instead of saying, yes, we achieved this, they say, we failed to prove it wrong. And it's like totally diminishes, I think, the message of whatever science is being conducted. But like, these guys are robots. They're so stuck in their left brain, their analytical mind, their determinist, judgmental side of the consciousness, that it's hard to get outside that perspective. And that's kind of what's happening at large in the world. And that's why it's so difficult to talk to people about it. That's why I'm here right now. Because, as has been said, I'm going to show you right now on the internet what's happening. So I posted about this a lot before. And there are, like I've said, there are experiments. They are novel quantum mechanic experiments. And they've been happening. I've been following them for years. I'm gonna put me down there. On the better side of a decade, I've been following these experiments. And this guy right here in the center, this is Thomas Campbell. He's an ex-NASA physicist. He retired from NASA as a nuclear physicist. So nuclear means study of the nucleus, of course, which is a part of a theoretical atom. Atoms don't exist, we'll get there later, but the model of the atom provides certain tools that we find useful as a society, and so we employ those models to produce fruits. But it is not overarching. It is not comprehensive. It is a limiting science that can only be applied in certain ways. I'm going to explain it right now. Anyways, nuclear physicist, retired. Also, famous dude. Because, well, he's not that famous yet, but he is about to be fucking famous because he is this generation's, I call him Baba G and Einstein mixed together, right? Because what did Einstein do? Hold on. Einstein, here we go. Einstein, he said, there was in Einstein's, his life, he kind of popularized that term. Okay. Great questions, American esoteric. I'll get to it. Definitely we'll get to that. But I want to introduce this guy because he's the one who wrote the simulation hypothesis that I'm talking about. And I realized people aren't listening to him. And so I gotta be a mouthpiece for him, hopefully, to more effectively translate the information to a wider audience, because I do believe it is enlightening and liberating. And it may or may not, I'm personally on the path of enlightenment and world enlightenment. I conduct my activities aimed towards trying to enlighten the world. And I think that's exactly what's happening here with Thomas Campbell. Because what he's talking about is a novel simulation hypothesis. I have the book around here somewhere, but it actually starts with somebody else named Robert Monroe. Robert Monroe, famous dude, sort of famous. He's more known than Thomas Campbell. He's the guy who made this book, Journeys Out of Body, and he popularized the term out-of-body experience. And he wrote a number of books. He's got 3 books. I got 2 of them right here. The other one's around here somewhere. But essentially, this is just some dude that was kind of well off and, didn't have anything better to do. And one day he started experiencing some paranormal phenomena. He would have out-of-body experiences. And so for a number of years, he would journal it in his journal, and ultimately he turned that into a book because he thought he was going schizophrenic, crazy, totally off the rails. And after researching into himself, other people's experiences, talking to all these doctors and psychiatrists, he's definitely not crazy. And so he put the book out there just for other people, to say, hey, these are my experiences. And if you think you're alone and having these weird stuff happen to you, well, maybe you're not that alone. But he wrote that book as a journal. And then he wrote this book called Far Journeys, which is where he decided, like I said, he was well off. And so at some point he decided to hire a bunch of scientists to come and help him study what was happening to him. And so he actually speaks in his book at length about this, about how he trained other people, these scientists, and all in a whole handful, hundreds of other people. Yes, the Monroe Institute, the Bob Monroe, Robert Monroe, founded the Monroe Institute because he was teaching other people how to achieve the same altered state of consciousness as he was through meditation and different mindful practices. And so his second book, Far Journeys, is all about studying the experiments, or studying the experiences, to understand what was happening to him, to see if it happened to other people in the same way, and to find out really if what was happening to him was real or if it was some delusional, sickness that he had, essentially. And he decided it wasn't. And in Far Journeys, they talk about how he studied this among other people, how he taught it to them. And then he's got a third book called Far Journeys, where he goes in on the ultimate meaning of everything he learned and how he makes sense of it all. So he paints a big picture of reality as well. I don't know if I'd call it an ultimate theory of everything, but it's just like his understanding of what happened to him and what it means for his life, and the most significant events to happen to him paranormally. Very interesting book. Very, very interesting. A lot of parallels to different ancient texts, different instances of, how should I say this? I'm just going to say like experiences of God, different shamanic experiences, different beatific vision, like out of bodies, dreams, stuff that happens to these dudes who think they're talking to spirits and angels is very reminiscent of that, and things you read in the Gnostic texts, things you read in the Corpus Hermeticum. Man, the Corpus Hermeticum's on it. This guy is like a living symbol of the Corpus Hermeticum, because he's like, oh, I was there in my room, very tired, like I felt like I was very full, and then I thought I fell asleep, but then I heard a voice that said, I know you, I'm with you everywhere, I know everything, what do you want to know? And so Monroe talks about very similar stuff. It's super interesting. Plato's vision, Julian of Norwich, the Gnostic Allogenes. Yes, amen, brother, amen. Fucking, it's crazy. They're not as paranormal as you think. They're actually like the most famous literature in existence. Dante's Inferno. Dante's the Inferno, the whole trilogy. I forget, but I got this other great book right here, which American Esoteric, man, you should check this out. This is Saint Mary of Jesus of Agreda, the mystical city of God. And she was famous for bilocation, astral projecting into other places where people would physically see her and think that she's some sort of angel spirit thing and start worshiping her. Lady Guadalupe, they called her. Lady in Blue. And she was like, controlled by the church and stuff. Very interesting case study. But these experiences are all over the place. And so, the second book is honestly the one that I was like least interested in until I heard of Tom Campbell, because I watched one video on Campbell and he's like 15 key discoveries that led to My Big Toe, which is an acronym for Theory of Everything. That's the one video I saw by him. I was like, holy shit, I got to read this guy's book right now. Did it, bought it, next day. Year later it goes by. I'm like getting it signed by the man himself, because it is the single most important book to me. I mean, definitely top 3, but single most important book to me at this time on my truth-seeking journey. Hell yeah, dude. Check her out. She's wild, bro. She's wild. And she's beautiful. I got a giant painting of her right here. But, and she's my background on my thing. I don't know. Can you see that right now? Here she is. This is a famous painting of her. It's kind of cut off, but that's St. Mary of Jesus of Agreda. And so at any rate, you got Robert Monroe's like just a dude, wrote a book, hired a bunch of scientists. One of these scientists was Thomas Campbell, who was already working at NASA as a nuclear physicist at the time. And he wrote The Theory of Everything, where he talks about how he was introduced to Monroe and how their journey kind of started together and how he worked with them. And, nobody knew who he was because he hid all their names in the book. But, a lot of stuff is coming out about the times when they were studying, and they're releasing a lot of the information from the Monroe Institute, which you can easily find online or on the famous CIA website, the Gateway Voyage report or something. Just Google CIA and Gateway. It'll be the first thing to come up. The CIA went to the Monroe Institute because they wanted to know what they were teaching people down there in terms of psi paranormal stuff, because the CIA has been on the psi paranormal kick for a long time. Long time. Cue The Men Who Stare at Goats. There's a lot of stuff going on in Russia with it. There's a lot of stuff everywhere with psi stuff. Like, I can't preach it enough, but I'm trying not to be preachy. But essentially, so Tom Campbell was, he had the 15 key discoveries that led to his big toe, bought the book, read the toe. I was like, this is the truth, but for a long time it was just a book, and like, it definitely changed the way I viewed the world, but not really. It like just verified all my intuitions about the world that had been stuffed down and smothered my whole life, right? And then as I continue to live, it gets more verified in my everyday life, because Campbell's book, My Big Toe, is about like the direct felt presence. It's about the moment. It is about, it's about like literally everything, but it's like personal, it's very personal. It's about you, your purpose, how you fit into the big world, like why creation was started, everything. It's a cosmology. And so I was fascinated with it. It was the clearest representation of metaphysics that I've ever seen. And I was like, I'd love to learn to meditate from the guy, because he learned transcendental meditation, which enhanced his psychic, paranormal, it enhanced his metaphysical experiences. I was already on TM, so I knew the power of it. And he talks in the beginning of his book about it, and I happen to live in Virginia where the Monroe Institute was, and this dude is doing tours to this day. He's been touring for like 30 years all over the world, and talking about his book, because people are reading it. They're like, dude, I need to talk to this guy. And so he came to the Monroe Institute in like 2017. I pulled through with my book, got it signed, and did a My Big Toe intensive, which is just like where you meditate with the author, Tom Campbell, for some time. And he gives you lessons, you ask questions about him or about meditation practices, about the book, about consciousness, and whatever the heck, it's like a giant meet and greet. And they recorded the whole thing. It's on YouTube. If you go to, I think, Tom Campbell's YouTube, which is called like MBT or something, you'll find it if you just use all the keywords and type it into the search bar. But he said it's all recorded on there, and I put up some recordings from my visit to the Monroe Institute on my YouTube channel as well, like my questions to Tom Campbell on the blockchain. At any rate, while I was there, but even before I was there, but while I was there, he announced to our group that he had designed experiments. And of course, he's asking money for it. He's like, yo, if you want to donate to these experiments I got going, we got a Kickstarter going, you can do that. And I was like, I was still skeptical. I was like, I've already given you enough money to be here at the Monroe Institute for a week, so let's just see how this goes. And so it didn't really dawn on me the significance of the experiments until like 2 or 3 years later, when like the ball really got rolling, because the dude made a lot of money off this Kickstarter, and then he published a paper, right? He published a scientific an experimental proposal, which is something that you need to do in order to get funding, in order to enact your experiments, which you can read on the internet. It's called On Testing the Simulation Theory, or maybe Hypothesis. Let's see. I'll pull it up for you. Let's go look at it. I actually got it right here. So, On Testing the Simulation Hypothesis. I'm going to put me down in the corner. Here you go. So this is his website, CUSAC, the Center for the Unification of Science and Consciousness. And if you scroll down, or maybe not, here it is. On Testing the Simulation Theory, a peer-reviewed journal, actually received on my dad's birthday. That's pretty cool. This guy, Human Owadi, he's definitely a human. This was published in the International Journal of Quantum Foundations, which has a significantly, like it has a respectable credibility rating, which if you don't know how scientific journals work, they work based on credibility ratings, right? How many times do you cite yourself? How many times do you cite other papers? Like, it's a quality grading on your scientific aptitude. But this is a good one. And so he published this, and I'll just read this abstract because it's enlightening. And mind you, well, before I read this, like, look at this right here. California Institute of Technology, Computing, and Mathematical Sciences, Pasadena, California. Jet Propulsion Laboratory. If you don't know about the metaphysical origins of JPL and that strange angel guy that was invested with Crowley in the early 1900s, Jack Parsons, who invented rocket fuel, which revolutionized space travel and enabled us to actually make usable rockets that reach the exosphere. Fascinating story, dude. There's a book called Strange Angel. It's about 1,000 pages. There's also a TV show that kind of goes into it called Strange Angel. I believe it's on Amazon Prime. Great story, dude. Phenomenal, incredible. Like, Jack Parsons was a goat. So, at any rate, Caltech, California Institute of Technology. That's a very prestigious physics university. You feel me? That's Caltech, also nowadays now known as Cal Polytech. And so these guys are who adopted this original paper on testing the simulation theory. And so that means that right now, as we speak, live here on YouTube, JD's Pharmacopoeia, that this experiment is being conducted. There are 5 experiments explained in this paper, which I'm not really going to go through. I'm going to read the abstract here, but it may be like a little bit of the introduction or the review. We'll see. But it's currently being conducted, and the first of 5 experiments is already done, and that's my sign. That's my trigger. Like, I got to tell somebody about this in the world, because my soul hurts, because I work in like a scientific environment as like at a lab doing food, nutrition, chemical analysis. But these dudes don't really fuck with science in the way that I do. They don't really fuck with chemistry or the world. It's like they're just doing their job, and they went to school and they got their shit, and they're just living. Surviving out here in the Matrix ain't easy. Most people are surviving, but we can thrive. We can soar so high if we are willing to look at the truth or alternative perspectives. And so here's an alternative perspective. Can the theory that reality is a simulation be tested? We, Tom Campbell, Human Owadi, Joe Savageau, and David Watkinson, we investigate this question based on the assumption that if the system performing the simulation is finite, i.e. has limited resources, then to achieve low computational complexity, such a system would, as in a video game, render content, aka reality, only at the moment that that information becomes available for observation by a player, and not at the moment of detection by a machine. That machine would be a part of the simulation, in whose act of detection would also be an internal computation performed by the virtual reality server before rendering content to the player. So that is the principle that is at play here. Guided by this principle, we describe conceptual wave-particle duality experiments aimed at testing the simulation theory. That's the abstract, and it's, I think, what should be potentially noted here is that, this is an abstract, and this is a scientific paper that talks about the theory, but it's not actually the theory. Like, if you read this entire paper and you knew it front to back, it's going to be really difficult for you to explain what the theory of everything actually says. And You know, because I'm like lecturing right now on this topic, I'm just gonna get the book. Hold, please. I'm back. Here it is. My Big Toe. Theory of Everything. Picture of a toe on the front because the dude's got humor. I guess. This is the theory. When they talk about the theory, the toe is the theory of everything. It's like almost 1,000 pages, a couple hundred short. And I think I said at the beginning, but if not, I'll say it again right now. I'll be the first to tell you, unless anybody else has, that the simulation hypothesis is not what you think it is, bro. It is so foreign unless you are very well versed in the occult, in mysticism, or the Western mystery tradition, the Eastern mystery tradition, Hinduism, any system that deals with the paranormal. Unless you're well versed in that, then this simulation hypothesis is going to be something that takes you by like complete surprise, because it's not what you think it is. And you really got to get past that, because the popular culture has definitely drilled into our heads that this isn't, that the simulation is something that it's not. That, you know, they paint a lot of fear around it, a lot of nihilism, even determinism, and that's totally still the diametric opposite of what it actually is. The simulation hypothesis, maybe I take us back to the paper real quick, because there are some really good things in there. So, woo, mini-me. Can the theory that reality is a simulation be tested? There's something in here. Here's a theory description right here. So a very short theory description. So basically, we live in a world now where the predominant worldview, which I say worldview, but you know, people don't even know that they have a worldview. But it's something that our culture was born with. Like, it's something that is embedded into our language and the way we speak and the way we've been brought up. It's embedded into everything. It's in our neurology. It's in our fucking genes at this point. And what they're saying is that it's hard to set that aside. It's difficult. Like, don't get me wrong. It's hard to get outside the deterministic thought process. But reality is not deterministic. It's not physical. There is no such thing as physical. And what Newton said was the ultimate governor of reality, physical interaction, or excuse me, Galileo said that with the mechanical clockwork universe. He said the reality is mechanical. We've since proved that it's not mechanical. Physical interaction never actually occurs. When I put my fingers together, they're not actually together. If you get down on the very micro level, there's no physical connection. There are just forces of repulsion pushing. There's always a separation between physical phenomena. And so, you know, this is something that's been hinted at a lot through philosophy throughout the time by heretics mainly. And like the guy I'm thinking of right now, occasionalism, by this Arabic philosopher Al-Jazili, who said that the cotton is not burned by the fire, right? If a fire is to catch something on fire, surely the charred, burned matter left behind by the fire was caused by the fire, right? Al-Jazili said simply, no, God caused it. God's the ultimate cause of everything, which isn't, you know, that satisfying of an answer for most people, especially nowadays. But quantum physics tells us that this is actually the truth, that there is no causal mechanisms in our perceived through our senses physical matter reality. Actually, all causation is derived from a higher dimension that is outside of our, what we're calling nowadays, space-time. So I say a lot of things with like quotes: physical matter reality, space-time, what we perceive through our senses. That's all kind of interchangeable. Okay. One thing you'll realize about the simulation hypothesis is that the first thing that it does is it postulates a physical matter reality and a non-physical matter reality. And to me, that was like the largest thing. How can you have a physical matter reality and a non-physical matter reality? But that's where it starts, right? It just starts there. And then he goes on at length to explain the connections and the mechanics between the two, which are not your average mechanical connections. They are non-mechanical, they're non-material. And so they are originating in consciousness, which is akin to a non-physical, omnipresent energy that has existed throughout time. So that's one of the assumptions of the theory, that consciousness exists, right? So we've got two theories at odds with each other, because the deterministic physicalism, which I would argue is a poison to our world, suggests that, free will is a delusion. Your sense of self, and people will argue free will because they're trapped in determinism. But let's not even go into free will quite yet. I'm coming back to your questions. I'm just finishing this quick story. But the physicalism suggests that your sense of self is a delusion and it is not actually real, which there may be truth to that, but not in the sense that they're suggesting, these physicalists. They're saying that it's an illusion, that your sense of self, your I-ness, is not real, and that it doesn't really exist. It's a byproduct of the brain, of the local physical brain, in the same way that the liver produces bile. Keep posting your thoughts, bro. I'm going to come back to them. We're literally going to talk, but I'm rolling right now because you told me. You said, let's go, so we're going. But physicalism suggests that your sense of self is completely false. It's wrong. It doesn't really exist, and it has no connection to reality. It doesn't impact anything. It doesn't do anything. It's literally a delusion, and it's not real. And there is some truth to this, but that's more metaphysical explanations and experiences than what these scientists are talking about. And so that's the predominant theory in our world right now. That's why I think the mainstream media is so horrible, because they are pushing this agenda, which is actually an archaic worldview, mostly like a Catholic, Abrahamic worldview, which does a lot of terrible things to us, but it suggests that you're basically worthless, meaningless, and that what you think is what the things of your life that are important are not essentially important. Now, the simulation hypothesis proposes, and there's another theory out there that does this. Perhaps you can remind me. That suggests that, I think it's called panpsychism or something, that consciousness is everywhere. It's an omnipresent, subtle, etheric force in the universe that is not localized to the body, that it exists distinctly separate from the body. And so these are the sides of the coin, which I don't know if I should be calling them a coin, but these are the two important worldviews that are being challenged right now, or that are being tested, potentially falsified. I'm going to be honest, we already falsified determinism, but we haven't accepted that as a culture yet. So I'm here to tell you that it's fucking done. We put the nail in the coffin. Physicalism is over. The new aeons are upon us. Modern atheists have endorsed panpsychism. Okay, so I think that's great. That's one giant leap for atheists. That's one giant step in the right direction, because direct experience will tell you that, right? If you take some of these plant medicines, some of these shamanic medicines, you're going to see very quickly that your consciousness is not localized to your brain. And I see how that can be argued. It's an altered state of your consciousness. Your brain's just generating stuff, but there's been too much research into people who have been clinically dead, who have gone to the afterlife, resuscitated, and come back. Brain dead, come back, Their experience never ended. They had a continuous experience. And so if you're brought up in the nihilist, deterministic worldview, yeah, and it's progress. Prestigious atheists with prestige in accept panpsychism, yeah. But shit, I lost my track. Well, I lost what I was saying, but the point that I'm driving home here is that we've got these two worldviews that are diametrically opposed to each other. One has already been falsified, but our culture pushes it as if it's true. And so now we're locked into this like artificial interaction with reality, which is producing all these events that are incoherent with our true desires, aims, goals, and intentions as human beings. I'm talking about like war, starvation, plague. All that shit is like because we don't live in harmony with the truth. And once you can live in synergy with a proper worldview, we're going to manifest a heaven on earth. All of the terrible shit that happens will slowly fade away. And that's why they say if you want to change the world, you change yourself. You got to change your worldview. But damn, I was saying something. All right, well, maybe I'll take this opportunity. Let me go back and read some of these comments. Some of the chat. In your approach to the simulation hypothesis, would you say the variety of inherent medicinal properties in plants suggests a simulated or programmed capability in the plant? Great question. This reminds me of what I was saying, though. If you take... So what I was saying, I will answer all the questions, swear to God. If you take some of these plant medicines, you're going to have an out-of-body, non-local experience. It's going to take you somewhere else. And people that do this, it's hard telling people that have never done this, but hearing it from people who've done it themselves, it's clear. When you experience something, it's undoubtable. There's no room for belief. It's not like, oh, I believe I went somewhere, or I think I went somewhere. It's like, bro, I went somewhere. That's why they call them trips, because you're taking a trip to somewhere and then you're going to come back, okay? And the NDEs that have been reported that have been studied by like places like the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia. There's a great Netflix documentary out there right now called Surviving Death. There is a lot of different people. There's a couple of other institutions. I forget their names, escape me right now. But essentially, the physicalist worldview suggests that like when you die, there's nothing. That it's just blackness, darkness, emptiness. And that puts an individual in a very suggestible state. Right? You have a lack of knowledge over your own destiny. Therefore, your destiny becomes malleable. And so, in the attempt to shed some light on the true functioning of this world, Thomas Campbell designed these fucking experiments which are going to do the same thing that Einstein did in 1919, where he predicted the appearance of a star that is not normally seen by the naked eye during the regular time of the year. It's only during an eclipse. So if you Google Einstein 1919, the eclipse that changed the world, is when Einstein applied his general theory of relativity. Now, this wasn't really an experiment, but he applied his theory in a way that showed its explanatory power. And that's what makes a scientific theory powerful, is its explanatory power over the nature of reality, over the phenomena that we're witnessing and observing with our own eyes. And if you have a very long, convoluted, complex theory, it's likely that it's probably wrong. Occam's razor is a principle that physicists abide by. And I think it was Eugene Wigner. It could have been somebody else, but they said the hallmark of a profound scientific theory is it is simple and elegant. It uses as little assumptions as possible and explains the most amount of phenomena in juxtaposition. And so the theory here, there's two assumptions. There's one that consciousness exists as a force in the universe, and then there is the assumption that evolution exists in the universe. Now we know evolution exists. People already love Darwin. Got some beef with him. We can talk about that later. He was a little bit too much into incest, if you ask me. But nobody's going to argue evolution exists. People seem to argue consciousness exists despite, I experience consciousness. Maybe there's a better word we could be using for this, like a sense of self and a sense of separateness from nature. Like, I experience that. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I am my own body. I've got agency over myself. And like what the physicalists, what the current paradigm is suggesting is that atoms, individual units of matter, take on some sort of specific shape, which then generates for those atoms the ability for them to manipulate themselves and have agency over their own cells. And so the question is basically, what shape do atoms have to take in order to produce Nick, who has feelings and tendencies and inclinations and thoughts and ideas and desires? And let's not get into the desire, but it produces people, individuals. It produces novelty, right? And so it produces free will and the agency to move things with your mind, right? To pick stuff up and play with it. Like, that's actually a mystery in science because of this physicalist worldview, basically saying that if we can know the shape of your atoms, we can predict your destiny. And we've gotten kind of far with this worldview. Like, neurologists, they'll say, they make this argument that you don't have free will because a neurologist can put all these sensors on your head and figure out, when you're going to make a choice. And like, it's before you're even conscious that you're making a choice, they can predict that you're going to make the choice. Now, these neurologists are doing this like that. They can predict it like within seconds before you make a choice. And they think that that is ultimate proof that you don't actually have a choice. That they see the choice arise first from the subconscious, like an impulse that finally triggers into you saying, I have made a choice. And, that's a good effort, but like, that doesn't really go very far. What are you going to that doesn't really go very far. A few seconds in the future, like, I can predict a couple things in the future right now that are probably going to happen for sure. Like, tomorrow, the sun's going to rise. And we can predict that too, I guess, with like astronomy and physics and stuff. But like, it gets much more difficult when you're talking about organic beings. Like, there's a famous experiment where they put the nematode C. elegans into a maze. C. elegans is a model creature to study because we can see its an entire anatomical structure with a microscope. It's only got like 300 muscle fibers and like 700 neurons or something. And so we can measure it all in live time while it's happening. And they put it in a maze and it's presented with an option, a choice. You need to go left or you need to go right. And so they're trying to find within the neurology the choice-making faculty within the nematode. Lo and behold, it remains elusive. They cannot find it. They don't know where it is. So that's a very interesting thing. What happens when we do this into humans? Well, it suggests to me and to others that the consciousness, what some people have called, aka TC Tom Campbell, the free will awareness unit, or the conscience, which is different from conscience, the choice-making faculties are non-local. They're not in the brain. The consciousness is not in the brain. It doesn't exist locally within the body. And there are also great advances being made in neuroscience that say, like, at first they thought consciousness was in the brain. And then they realized that, actually it's spread throughout the whole body, and that your whole body is sort of conscious. And that's a leap in the right direction, but I would argue that we must take another leap and see where this goes. Actually, consciousness extends beyond the body. And that's one thing Robert Monroe was saying. His catchphrase is, you are more than your physical body. That's an aphorism. If you want to have an out-of-body experience for yourself, you program your consciousness to say, I am more than my physical body. I'm not my physical body. I go beyond this. And so I think when science kind of comes to that conclusion, like these hard physicalist scientists come to that conclusion, they're going to realize that this physicalist perspective, that one particle interacts with another particle to cause events to transpire, is not the true, needless to say. So I ran out of a little bit of stuff to say, I guess, or I'm not sure if I had more, but that's really like where so much of this comes from, is that we have an old archaic perspective. It's not explanatory. We need to replace it. It's hard to replace because science progresses by one old scientist dying at a time, right? Okay, legitimately, I'm getting to some questions right now. Shout out American Esoteric. Check out his channel. He is doing some amazing stuff in elucidating the Renaissance information, the occult, the mystery traditions of the world, from the oracles of Delphi all the way down to who you were talking about Al Jazili the other day. He's got all sorts of stuff. Check him out on Instagram and YouTube. He's doing great work. He says, in your approach to the simulation hypothesis, would you say the variety of inherent medicinal properties in plants suggests a simulated or programmed capability in the plant? So the simulation hypothesis basically says that reality is simulated. And so everything in reality is simulated. It's a virtual reality, in that it doesn't matter if you're in the physical or if you're in the out of body. If you're in consciousness is virtual. And I think, cat just jumped on the keyboard, but I think we're good. He said that, so yes, in a sense, yes, the plants themselves are programs. I like to think of them as icons on the desktop, which allow us to interface with the reality, with the whatever else the computer is capable of, right? You got a computer, you don't have any icons. What are you going to do on your desktop? You're just going to, like, I don't know, the computer's just existing. It's not really doing anything. It's not until you get into the mail and you get into the World Wide Web and you start using the calendar apps that you realize this thing's capable of a lot of shit. That's exactly what the plants are doing. And the program the plants run are quote-unquote chemical programs. But again, that doesn't mean that, people think that, I don't want you to think that just because something is simulated, so that it's not real or it's not significant, because it's not saying that. It's just saying that's the nature of it. It's the same thing as saying things are just atoms. It's like, oh, everything's just atoms. Okay, so everything's deterministic. We can predict everything. There's nothing special about life. Free will is not real. Like, that's kind of where that's going. But I think that the simulation hypothesis, the programming of consciousness through multitudinous means, suggests that we do live in a coded reality. And that is not a good nor bad thing. That's just a fact that explains how some of this stuff is happening. Because if you want to try to understand a DMT experience from a physicalism reality, from a physicalist perspective, you're not going to be able to do it. You're just going to have to collect the data and sit back and let it happen. and then try to make sense of it after the fact. Now, that's not a good scientist. A good scientist has a model that makes sense of it before it happens. That's what prediction power is. That's what explanation, that's what good explanatory theories do, to the point where you don't have to run the experiment to gather the data. You just have to observe reality and have a proper view of it, and then you can see where it's going. So he said, I want to hear about atoms not existing. Well, I'll say this. And actually, maybe this is where I can take us back to the paper on the simulation hypothesis. So let me take me down here. I'm not that important. Make me small. So here's a review. Maybe I'll read the review and the theory description here, because this will shed light. So very, very briefly, though, this is what the scientists were trying to figure out. Is like, what is the true nature of reality? What is it made of? What is the substance, the hypostasis, the fundamental fabric of reality? You know, Einstein was like, it's space-time, right? And they developed more and more complex experiments as time went on. And let's just skip all the history, go right up to the 1940s and the double slits, because that's what is the famous one sort of right now, soon to be replaced. But the double slit experiments showed that the physicalist worldview of a particle, you know, the Newton's first law, that an object in motion tends to stay in motion until acted upon by an outside force. Quantum mechanics, quantum experiments showed that that model is no longer correct. That quantum entanglement and that the double slit phenomena of a wave versus a particle shows that objects are changing their physical states without physical interaction. So there is no physical mechanism. They showed that reality on its fundamental level is not abiding by classical laws of Newtonian mechanics. And this broke a lot of people's hearts, because they thought they were onto something, and they just realized that reality made a fool of them. Shout out to the Bible, that one verse where it's like, the height of man's wisdom is but foolishness to the Most High. I love that verse, and it's so true right there, because these scientists are like, I know it, and then they're like, holy shit, we don't know it. And it's still taking over a century for people to realize what Einstein and Wigner and Wheeler were saying all the way back then. So they realized then the reality wasn't actually physical in nature. So what we have are models of interaction of reality. We see this thing interacts this way, and so we think of an intellectual model to explain how that interaction is taking place. And so when you apply that model, damn, what the hell am I saying? Yes, when you apply that model, the physical model, that physical things interact with other physical things to cause events to transpire, doesn't actually work, breaks down. And so that was basically, it's summed up in a great physicist axiom, John Archibald Wheeler, who invented words like black holes and wormholes, and he did many very famous thought experiments, which eventually turned out to be true, as they were later experimented and proven after he died that he was right. So basically it's this principle that reality is not physical in nature, that actually, well, first we thought it was physical. This is what he said. At first, I thought the world, that everything was made up of particles, that everything was physical. And then there was a great turning point in science with the Maxwell's field equations, which explain the nature of essentially radiation propagation through the vacuum of space, which explain things like electromagnetics and enabled us to create radars and radio and all sorts of quote unquote non-physical technologies, right? So what we're calling physical now, if we went back to, Newton's time and we showed him a radio, he would think that that's absolutely spooky. He would think that that's literal magic, that's what they call action at a distance. And so the physicalists set out to disprove this action at a distance notion, and ultimately ended up proving that actually action at a distance is probably fundamental. But they were scared to really drive it home because they don't understand how action at a distance works, because the whole universe, from a human being standpoint, looking with our eyes and ears and hands and nose and simple minds, perceive the world as a physical thing. Like, we see things causing physical things to happen, but the world is presenting itself to us in a way that is not the true nature of how it's really working, which is a mind fuck and hard to get past. But that's what these physicists were like realizing at this time, because their theories were failing. They were not being validated. They were falsifying themselves, and they fell short. Just as Newton fell short of explaining gravity, Einstein on space-time fell short of explaining quantum mechanics, and so they had to develop a new science. So John Archibald Wheeler. So that was another turning point with the Maxwell field equations that are significant, because that allowed a new perspective that explained different things in the world, specifically non-physical interaction, that there's radiation in different forms that can have effects on matter from a non-local standpoint, from a non-physical standpoint. So John Archibald Wheeler said, at first I thought everything was made up of particles, that the world was physical in nature. And then he says, and then I thought that, he's still thinking, he said, and then I thought that the world was made of waves, that reality was waves. Everything was waves, which is another way of saying radiation. And this doesn't hold weight either. Unfortunately, lends a lot of credence to the wave-particle duality, because there are aspects of the particles that can't be explained by the wave mechanics, and there's wave mechanics which are definitely not explainable by the particle mechanics. And so they teach you in chemistry and physics and most sciences, but definitely not all of them, that reality is dual nature, that it has and sometimes matter acts and abides by the laws of the wave, and sometimes matter reacts and abides by the laws of the particles. It's a dualistic worldview that remains unreconciled till today, till these past couple of months with Tom Campbell's new experiments. So, in an attempt to reconcile them, John Archibald Wheeler continued to seek the truth and the understanding, and he said, at first I thought it was all waves, then I thought it was all particles, not in that order. But then he says, to finish that off, now I know that it's all information. The reality is information theoretic in origin. So that's a crazy thing to say and doesn't even make sense, really. It didn't make sense to me the first time I heard it. I'm like, what do you mean information theoretic in origin? Does a bear shit in the woods if nobody's around to see it? No, it don't. Well, actually, it do, but not in the way you think it does. Not in the way our feeble human minds would perceive it. And so it remains as a probabilistic informational internal computation by reality, by the simulation, by consciousness. Okay, so that's a key thing from the simulation hypothesis, is that sorry, I'm going to read some of these comments, is that Keith, what's up, bro? Greetings and salutations. Where does yay fit in all of this? Bro, Ye fits in, dog. He fits in. He talks about occasionalism in his song Remote Control, where he's like, I got it on remote control. Don't copyright me, but listen to that song. It's about all this. So he said wave particle duality. We got two different worldviews. We got a third worldview now, which they read these scientists back in the double slit days. They realized the truth. Like if you go back and read all their letters between each other, what's up, Tom? Your boys in the house. We're talking physics in here, man. They realized that neither of these two perspectives were fully explanatory, and that the fundamental nature of reality was information, which it means observer dependent. And so it depends on the observer, on who you are, whether you're a squirrel or a monkey or a jellyfish or a human, what reality is. Reality to a dog looks a lot different than to a human. And that's because not because of the brain of the dog or of the brain of a jellyfish or whatever. The brain basically is a jellyfish and trapped inside of a calcium deposit. But it's because reality renders itself, and as we're about to see in the theory over here, that the consciousness that is the projector, that reality is the screen of the consciousness, okay? And so that means that all the information available to us is actually a reflection of all of the information that we've ever gathered for ourselves and that we've ever been able to observe and contemplate. So the observer is fundamental to the existence of reality. We are locked in to this dance with the world where as long as we choose to look at it, it's going to continue to exist for us. And until the day we all stop existing, everything is just going to fold up back into itself in some sort of shutdown. You know, you just hit the code and things shuts down. You click the end button, right? So there is, like down here on rendering reality, or on the on the initialization of the simulation. So there is no Big Bang, and don't let me get into the Kabbalah, to the I don't know who invented this word, but I got beef with that too. Somebody pressed the enter key and the simulation started iterating. But that insinuates like an exit key or an escape key or control alt delete. What are all these keys? Where's the fucking keyboard? Who coded it? So we've got this idea that the reality was started, it already existed, and then we just opened the program, essentially. And then just like in a video game, you got all sorts of different players. Some of them are observers, and some of them are a part of the game. They're NPCs, or what Tom Campbell calls AI guys. People that aren't actually real players. They're just a part of the computer. But essentially, let's see. Okay, so there are three main perspectives. We're talking about the particle, the wave, the information theory. John Archibald Wheeler, wave particle duality, interpreting how reality is working and trying to make sense of it. Okay, so this is a cool thing. In the 1930s, so I'm a chemist, if you don't know. I'm sure you all know. Yes. If you if you do the research on the wave particle duality and like how all this stuff came about, I swear to God, one day I'm going to write a book about it because I'm pissed nobody's ever written a book about the history of the scientific worldview. But they couldn't make sense of any of this shit. They couldn't make sense of the experiments. Their theories were wrong. They're grasping at straws. They're freaking out. This guy, Ernest Solvay, who was a chemist who actually invented baking soda, the synthesis of baking soda, he called all the world scientists together. Let me get a picture of this for you. He called all the world scientists together to show that or to like, it's the Avengers meeting of the scientists. right? He called Einstein up. He called Bohr. He called Bohm. He called everybody together, the leading figures in on the planet, the highest, best knowledges, dudes with knowledge in the world. Like, okay, my screen's not fucking zooming, but like, you got Einstein here front and center. He's looking good. You got Werner von Heisen, or Werner, not Werner von, excuse me. What's his damn name? Werner Heisenberg. He's in there somewhere. I don't know what he looks like. You got David Bohm in here somewhere. Niels Bohr, who is Einstein's protege, right? So Solvay called all these Avengers together to try to figure out what the fuck is going on in reality. There it goes. And they discussed this stuff for many years. They were trying to reconcile all this experimental information they were getting. And John Archibald Wheeler might be in here somewhere. And what they came away from these conferences with was many different interpretations on what the experiments of the quantum physics experiments meant. And the meetings still happen today under the purview of the Royal Society, who I think of as kind of like an Illuminati entity. They're kind of sketch, you know? But essentially the main interpretation they came away with was the Copenhagen interpretation, which states that physicists can calculate as if quantum waves existed, even though they do not. In this view, any detection causes a quantum collapse that does not actually occur. There is the many worlds theory, which views reality as a branching process where measurements cause splitting into possible outcomes. There is no quantum collapse because every collapse option occurs in some other universe. So this is the one where people say that every possible reality exists in the world, in the multiverse, and that our power of agency over ourselves, our free will, allows us to determine which reality to move into. Interesting theory. Doesn't hold up in the simulation hypothesis, because basically they say that that's a lot of processing power that gets wasted generating all these infinite universes just because it's possible. That's not necessary. You don't need to generate every universe if there's not really going to be real players there, real people to observe it. The third one is the von Neumann-Wigner theory that human consciousness triggers quantum collapse. So there is truth to all three of these. There is, but none of them are comprehensive. And so he's going to talk about this, and the theory that consciousness causes collapse is not widely accepted, as it seems to lead towards solipsism and problems of consistency over time. Eventually, Wigner abandoned the theory towards the end of his life. Why create an event like the Big Bang with no one there to observe it? Why does the bear shit in the woods if I can't sit around and hang out with the bear? Frankly, never mind. Bears, you don't go in the woods with a bear. You know that nowadays. So anyways, we'll get down to the, I want to see where Wheeler is in here. Because he said all this stuff about the theoretical nature of reality. Essentially, what all this comes down to is that reality is probabilistic in nature, that we live in a probability-based reality and not a determinist reality. Greetings and salutations to all the boys in the chat. What's good? Yo, welcome to another day in the simulation with Den Body. Add me on Snapchat if you haven't already. We're going to synthesize all this into plant medicine now. Mr. American Esoteric says, simulation theory is a valid modern lens to view reality in a similar manner as the esoteric schools throughout history. It is another tool to approach the mysteries. Amen. Amen. Amen Ra. Godspeed, brother. Love your soul. We'll do this again very soon. I'm going to keep going full steam ahead because I haven't quite wrapped it all up yet. I don't know. I got to keep an eye on time. Does anybody have the time? How long have we been here? Doesn't fucking matter. Look. So I kind of started talking about plant medicine earlier because you can take some shit that will transport you directly into another world. So that is the experience that you need for yourself to realize that reality is not as it's been presented to us by the, I'll call the psychological authorities in the world. You know, they shove a nihilist, solipsistic, deterministic, materialistic worldview down our fucking throats, man. And it's actually retarding the evolution of society. So ideology is very important. The PH in PhDs doesn't stand for power of hydrogen. It stands for philosophy, motherfucker. So if a scientist, doesn't matter what he's doing, if his philosophy is founded on is wonky, you know, if his cornerstone of philosophy is not solid, then, you know, the whole building's going to collapse. The philosophy is the keystone to the whole thing. And that's why you can't just read the paper and understand it. You got to read the book because it's going to enlighten you. It's going to change how you see the world. Because right now the world basically is saying that you're a random, persistent, mutated monkey who's floating on a speck of rock dust in infinite space in a random part of the universe, and your sheer existence is just some sort of chance. It's some sort of, you would argue that it's a miracle, and definitely even the physicalist, materialist worldview perspective has miracles embedded into it. They say that every theory of everything has a fundamentally mystical origin. And so that is the one. The Big Bang is the fundamental mystical origin of reality. And he said the Big Bang, if you do the gematria of this, Big Bang 3342, suspect. But everything came from nothing. That's a miracle, okay? That's a mystery. That is the fundamental mystical tenet of materialism. Now, the fundamental mystical tenets of the simulation hypothesis say that consciousness exists. It is the augmented universal oneness that existed before anything existed. It was just raw information, and information doesn't have any meaning until it develops order and turns into data, right? And so the universe started creating data out of information. It didn't create something out of nothing. It created data out of information, and that's how we got here, through the continual refinement of these informational processes that are quote-unquote theoretic in origin, as John Archibald Wheeler, the famous quantum physicist fucking father, told us. How does this work? How does this, like, let's ground this, right? From the fruits to the roots, man. We're gonna ground this shit right now because we've got some amazing fruits. All the Einstein, all those guys from the Solvay conferences, they understood at the end of the day that consciousness was a key player in the interaction of physical matter in the world, in the collapse of the wave function and quantum entanglement, in the actual generation of reality itself. Consciousness was a fundamental player in that dance that I said we're in. But they didn't know where to go with that. They didn't know really what that meant for them. They thought that, they didn't think. You got to go, they did think, but they, not really. They just argued with each other. You got to go back and read all the letters because they basically all end up saying, yeah, everything we've produced now is bunk and we need something that's completely novel, completely foreign, completely outside of the realm, Einstein said, of the realm of space-time. Space-time is completely non-fundamental. It doesn't exist. Matter as he describes it doesn't exist. Physical things don't exist as we describe them. As I said earlier, atoms are not real now. I'm a chemist studying chemicals, and I'm here to tell you chemicals aren't real. It is not the true. Excuse me. It is not the actual nature of reality. It's how reality is presenting it to itself to us. Oh, I see the time. It's 1:30. Holy shit. All right, we're going to keep it under 2 hours, but this is probably going to happen again and again and again. So fucking subscribe, hit the like button, all that bullshit. I don't know. Whatever the kids on YouTube are saying nowadays. What the simulation hypothesis is telling us is that there is consciousness, and consciousness is non-physical to reality. And that if we want to experience the true nature of ourselves, we have to dive into our consciousness. And when we do that, we will, in a sense, leave this reality. The simulation hypothesis states that this is a virtual reality. Our experience is a virtual reality game. Our bodies, just like in Hinduism and Sanskrit, the avatara, our bodies are the avatar, just like in a Sims game. You got Sims down there. You can control the Sims, but the Sim is not the player. How do we get to the player? The player exists outside of the local reality, outside of the local virtual reality. It exists in another simulated world, but it doesn't exist in the virtual reality, which is what we're in now. So you got to get outside of this reality, back to the virtual reality, back to where the player is. And when you do that, they say you're actually playing a lot of games at once, or that you can, and that there's another reality, the non-physical matter reality, that exists distinctly separate from this physical reality. And so the hypothesis says that it's through consciousness and it's through meditation that you experiment with consciousness. And I've been saying this whole time, even before I read the simulation hypothesis, that the point of plant medicine is to get in tune with your consciousness, to balance your physiology so that you are at peace with yourself, essentially, that you are healthy, that you are psychologically sound, your compos mentis compass or whatever, that you have a balanced internal state, you exist in harmony, and that basically just to be healthy. Because when you're healthy, the meditation process becomes easier. And so you gotta ask yourself, what is the goal of meditation? Now, going off of what Robert Monroe is saying and what most people say, the goal of meditation is to become as relaxed as humanly possible without falling asleep. And when you do this, your brain, it kind of hacks your brain. It kind of hacks your consciousness. It alters your consciousness in a way that isn't regularly observed in our everyday walking experience. And so what we discover is that there's an aspect of our experience which we neglect, which we experience regularly in dreams, in imagination, in thinking, in intuition, in falling in love, in let's say everyday life. the existence of the self, everything that is important to us, literally everything that's important to you in your life, is an aspect of consciousness and cannot be defined by the physical reality. You know, your genes, there's a lot of explanatory power there, but not enough. Not enough, my friends. Not enough to tell you that there is another reality. You can't read the genetic code unless you have been enlightened and you have the alternate worldview and you've had the experiences. But a materialist scientist is not going to be able to read the genetic code and then say, damn, actually the human body is meant to be an interdimensional, interplanetary transmission device of consciousness to project our awareness across space and time, across the simulation, across the worlds. It's impossible, or it hasn't been done yet. And so what I'm saying, what everybody's saying, is that we need a new theory to understand what's happening to us. Now, we can give ourselves the experience through DMT, ayahuasca, psilocybin, mescaline, all this stuff, meditation, just, you know, Kriya, holotropic breathing. Like, we can give ourselves the experience. But if you don't have the map of experience, then you might come out of that worse than you were before, right? You might come out a little fucked up, a little shell-shocked on what you witness, because it breaks everything that you thought you know down into something that you don't know, you haven't comprehended, nobody's ever told you about before. Like, this is some alien stuff we're talking about. You are an alien to this world. And the science has proved it, but we can't explain it. The science has provided evidence towards this fact, but it hasn't explained it in totality because people don't have the roadmap. Now, this book is the roadmap. This is the roadmap of consciousness. It started as a theory of consciousness, which he later translated into a theory of quantum mechanics. It turns out, if it truly is a theory of everything, it should be able to explain physics, quantum phenomena, all this stuff. Turns out it does. We are now predicting things which we thought were inherently random in reality. I'm talking about radioactive decay. I'm talking about beam splitting. I'm talking about generating results of experiments before the experiments are done. Predicting the future. Oracle shit. Okay, read the book, bro. The oracle is within. So you got to get in the right frame of mind, because we do have plants that will just send you there and take you back quick, just like that, like a rocket ship. But then we also have plants that have been used for thousands of years by many different tribes, many different peoples across the world, from non-connected continents to excuse me, I know I shouldn't do that into the microphone, but I did, sorry. We got plants called 1-irogens, which affect your dreaming consciousness. Things like Entada reedi, Selenicapensis, Mexican dream herbs. I've never really tried that one. And then there's psychedelics, which just provide you alternative emotions. I don't know if I'd call that an altered state of consciousness, although it definitely is, but there's a difference between having visual experiences and auditory experiences and then having emotional experiences, empathetic experiences, feelings of bliss, feelings of oneness, feelings of acceptance, and feelings of surrender and joy. Like, those aren't necessarily altered states of consciousness or altered reality frames. Those are somewhere in between, you know, getting on the astral and staying grounded. They're kind of more on this side. And then there's other plants which aren't as directly, experientially, phenomenologically challenging, so we should say. They're the ones that just kind of help you increase the quality of your body, the quality of your mind, the quality of your consciousness, and the quality of your life through aiding and abetting your homeostatic nature. They help you maintain homeostasis. They fight off viral infections. They fight off, they fight off free radicals. They regularize, normalize adaptogens. They're called. They normalize your body to be more in tune with the environment, because you are an extension of the environment and you must live in balance with it. Otherwise, you will perish. And we are perishing. Look at the world. Look at the slavery. Look at the starvation. Look at the third world countries we're decimating. Look at the earth that we are raping and pillaging of all our precious minerals and oils. We're out of balance. We got neurotransmitters. We got neurotransmitters that ain't working right. We got stuff that our neurology, our electrical impulses, you know, they're not working the way that evolution geared them towards, because we have detached ourselves from the natural way of the world, and they have we have experienced a consequence of that. And so we are getting results in the world which we don't intend, and we're trying to fix those results. We're trying to fix the wars, we're trying to fix the starvation, trying to fix the homelessness, but it's causing more problems in other ways. It's causing more homelessness, causing more wars, causing more death and destruction. And it's like, bro, we're eating our own tail over here. How do we get out of this endless negative feedback loop and start getting a positive feedback loop going in the other direction? And the step in the right direction is acknowledging the reality of the situation, that we don't live in a physical world. We live in a world of consciousness. The world of consciousness, an enigma. We're born into a mystery and we die into a mystery. No longer shall we be confounded by this mystery due to our culture, due to our authority figures, due to the wickedness of this world. Now we are born into a miracle and we die into a miracle. That is the nature of the world. That is the emphatic truth, because at the end of the day, we're all going to leave this planet and we will experience the truth. And I'm not trying to I'm not trying to turn atheists into believers. Whatever Ye said, he fits in there, Keith. He's in there. We're trying to know the truth before we are forced into it, aka die. So it says in the Bible, carry your cross daily. It says somewhere else that you need to kill yourself daily. And we don't mean it like, we mean it like, you know, that's meant to say that you need to put yourself in, I don't want to say near death, but you need to, I study death. We need to familiarize ourselves. We need to read the maps that have been given and handed down to us time after time, because these alternate worldviews, I think like one of the best out there is Hinduism. Read about into Hinduism and get somebody who's like English or speaks whatever your native tongue is and is an expert in that, because they'll tell you that these guys were an advanced civilization, that they had an advanced understanding of the world compared to what we have now. How else were they able to, you know, have, what did Gandhi do? Peacefully, non-violent, civic. He did, what did he call it? He said it was like a non-violent civic duty or something, or it was like activism, but it was peaceful. You know, he kicked the ruling authorities out of India through peaceful acts of rebellion. And we need to do that on the world. We need to understand that life itself is the nature of reality, and we need to encourage and cultivate life in its ideal form, meaning like healthy and housed and social and contributing with the community, contributing to the community, and having a strong nuclear family, and just cultivating these fundamental tenets of life so that we can like raise the quality of living for ourselves and peacefully remove the tyrants of the world which are shoving these archaic philosophies into our faces and causing a lot of chaos where there should be no chaos. So that's my ploy to you. If you want to change the world, change yourself, man. Get healthy. Get these fucking microplastics out of our wombs. Get these microplastics out of our balls. Get these social systems, these unjustified, illegitimate authorities, IRS, get them the fuck out of here so that humanity can bud into what it is supposed to be. Because what we got now, I feel like I'm kicking a dead horse, but you gotta understand how important this is. This is literally life or death for many people on the planet. So that's it. I got a lot more to say about the simulation. Like, we didn't even really go into the mechanics of it or the inner workings, we could say. But we will in the future. And I just wanted you to know now that that's kind of where I'm going to go with this channel or whatever. I don't know. That's how I'm, like, what I feel like I need to be shouting from the rooftops right now. So here I am on the rooftop, because this knowledge is what is going to take us into the new era of human life, human civilization. It is going to change the entire aims and goals and directions of science, and it is going to create a heaven on earth. I'm fairly certain, but you know what they say, like the earth is a midwife, or the earth is the wife. She is birthing a baby. The baby is civilization. And we are juveniles in the video game. We are level 1 for sure. Still learning the controls. We don't know the controls. And we're just now getting into the game. And it's a fun game for sure. We're definitely going to be back around. The whole purpose of the game to me is like, this is the best part, because we haven't discovered the truth yet. There's going to be a point in the far future where we look back on history and we see that there was a turning point where we stepped out of Plato's cave, where we began to see that we were living in a pre-truth civilization, and now somebody discovered it and brought it to the masses. And now there's the post-truth civilization, and things are going to be way different in the post-truth civilization. But the exciting part is right now is that it is pre-truth. And so if you discover the truth, welcome to the movement, my friend. Welcome to the revolution. We're here. We need you. Find your truth. Speak your truth. Be the greatest version of yourself you can be. Always be searching for the next grandest image of who you truly are. How do you search for it? Look inside yourself, man. Take 15 minutes every day, twice a day, to meditate, to try to peel back the layers of yourself. Silence your mind. Silence your mind. See the man behind the curtain. You are the curtain. Where is the man? Where is the player behind the avatar? That's what we're going to figure out. We're going to figure that out. And then we will be gods on the plane. We will be demigods. Half man, half god. My ear hurts. There we go. Anyways. That's all I got for now, guys. Thank you for tuning in, for staying here. Saw a bunch of my friends here and a bunch of people I've known for a long ass time. That really warms my heart. I wish I could. All right, let me just go quickly through all these messages and see if there's anything I need to reply to. You were saying Gnostic and Hermes as I typed it. That's another worldview. Look into Gnosticism and what they believe the purpose of the human is to have the direct experience of divinity yourself. That flies in the face of all these traditional Abrahamic worldviews where they say, don't fucking look inside of yourself for God. Only the church knows God. Only the priest knows God. The priest knows God. And only they can communicate with God on certain days if you're wearing the right garb and you're in the right temple and you say the right words at the right time during the equinox or whatever. That's the old age. The new age is every single person is tapped in to the mind of God, to the supercomputer, to the simulation databases, and no lies will ever be able to be manifest ever again. Truth will be known. The simulation theory says that you're basically a Trafalmadorian, and you can go back and forward through time and see events for yourself and even simulate them under different conditions so that you can understand what would happen if. We live in a big what if machine. What would happen if things started this way? Well, they're happening this way. You got the power to go back somewhere along the line, anywhere, and be like, hey, what happened if Hitler won World War II? What would happen if Paul Revere didn't get the things with the lanterns and the British came? What would happen if Einstein was never born, right? This is the power we have. You want to go back and see what happened at 1 AD or 33 AD or 0 BC, whenever the fuck Jesus was alive. Go back and see it. You are living in an interdimensional vehicle that is being used to drive around on the road, to walk down the street, okay? So you get in the meditation, you explore your consciousness, and you will see that there's something going on behind the curtain. There's something happening up there. Just takes a little bit of attention, time, dedication, motivation. I'm here to motivate you. When vibrational densities are similar enough, they create the illusion of solidity, the octaves of the harmonic universe. Reality in this way is non-dually physical and non-physical. I agree 100%. I agree 100%. I would add to that the complexity of wave interaction generates the patterns out of information into data. And so these waves are generating data which then has the capacity for infinite expression. The waves have a characteristic known as discrete infinity, which means you take a finite substance or something that has limited resources and you produce infinite variations of that thing, sort of like language, exactly like language. 26 letters, infinite expressions, phrases, sentences, words. That's what the waves do. The waves generate information and the particles generate information. Information is the hypostasis. It is the first one, and then it informs all the others. So right now, the current worldview is like a giant triangle, Illuminati, And, at the top of the triangle is physics. And then you have chemistry. And then you have biology. So physics informs chemistry. Chemistry informs biology. Biology then creates life and informs the experience of life and consciousness. That's what I'm saying is the wrong theory. The right theory is when consciousness, which is conventionally on the bottom, is moved to the top. Consciousness informs physics, which informs chemistry, which then informs biology and life. And so we are living in the upside down right now, and we need to get back right side up. For the love of God, seek the kingdom of heaven within yourself. The church doesn't want you to know. That's also the thing in time. Like I was saying, like pre-truth, post-truth, it's pre-access to the mind of God to post-access to the mind of God. It's coming. The experiments will usher that reality in. It might take a couple hundred more years from now, but I'm here to fucking get the ball rolling. It has the capacity to render an experience of both. Yes, I agree. Good use of the word render as well. Saw that. Modern atheists have endorsed panpsychism. I'm looking at the live chat right now. Journal of Near-Death Studies. All right? That sounds like very good. I'm going to look that up. Let's not get into the desire. The brain is a conduit, a TV tapping into different channels of consciousness, 100%. All right, that's all I got for you today. Thank you all very much for joining me. Nicholas Jensen Denton, JD's Pharmacopoeia. We're going to come back and we're going to talk more about plant medicine. We're going to talk more about science. We're going to talk more about chemistry. We're going to talk more about everything. Life, the universe, the way it is. Toes, fingers, everything from head to toe. So thank you very much. Have a grand existence, citizens of the universe.